The Nelson Mandela Bay Metro's Electricity and Energy Department is currently working to repair hundreds of broken streetlights across the metro. It's in an effort to mitigate vandalism and theft. Officials have begun installing aluminium cables instead of copper. Our reporter Siphosethu Booi joins us now from one of the streets there. A windy Gqeberha, I believe today, Siphosethu. Who is stealing this infrastructure? Oh, dear me. We're looking at the sky now. We'll hopefully be able to get Siphosethu back on. Siphosethu, are you guys able to speak to us?
Hi, Tamekile. Good morning. Good afternoon, rather, to you. And we are in Gqeberha, like you mentioned. The wind has been blowing since the early hours of this morning, and we are joined, of course, by the MMC for Electricity and Energy, Lance Grootboom. I must make mention of the fact that the street has been busy. They have been removing cables, the copper cables you mentioned, Tembekile, to the aluminium cables here in the area called Bethelsdorp. And I'm not sure if you're going to be seeing the visuals. I'm going to ask my colleague to just quickly show you that the installation is currently underway, and the MMC will be joining me just now. MMC Lance Grootboom, as my colleague just gives a clear view of the visuals of what's currently happening here. Just take us through this new project and the importance of it, from moving from copper to, of course, aluminium. I mean, vandalism has been one of the key issues that has been affecting Gqeberha, of course, as well as the municipality resources, with vandals taking these copper wires and cables and selling them to other companies like Cheeks. Just give us a roundabout in terms of where we are currently with numbers, with installations, so forth and so on.
Thank you, Siphosethu. Siphosethu, we've started this project recently because we want to deter vandals from damaging our infrastructure. Now, as a city, we are no longer installing copper cables. We are making use of aluminium cables. Aluminium cables, why we're doing that is because there are no market really for aluminium. But we do know there is a scrap metal market for copper. And the scrap metal market for copper is worth a lot of money. So criminal elements goes into our communities and they tear our infrastructure apart. So we are stopping that, because we know now that there will be no value really in the aluminium. So here in the street that you've just seen, we are now installing only aluminium cables. This is just to deter the vandalism in our city. And this will be an ongoing project across the city, because we want to mitigate against electricity losses and damage to our infrastructure. Because this is critically important for us as a city to make sure that our residents has uninterrupted electricity supply. We want our businesses also to have that uninterrupted electricity supply, because at the end of the day, this vandalism of our infrastructure has a huge impact on the economy, and that has an impact on job creation. And we are doing everything in our power here in Nelson Mandela Bay to make sure that we are dealing with vandalism and taking action. And this project, by changing and using aluminium, which is very cost effective, it is very cheaper than copper, and it does the job. And that is what we want to see and what we want to do to make sure that we fight vandalism in our city.
There's a backlog of 31,000 plus with the municipality with regards to making sure that we now remove the current copper to, of course, the aluminium. How are you going to mitigate that?
Listen, like I said, we are going to communicate. Communication is now critical to us. A lot of people out there are under the impression that we are using copper, but we are not using copper anymore. And the problem is with some of the criminal elements. They go and they tear our infrastructure apart. Then they realize, oh my word, this is actually aluminium and it doesn't have any value. Then they take it to electrify informal settlement areas, because that's the only place they can actually use it, because there's no market. So the intention of this program also at the same time is to communicate out there so that the people in our city can be aware that we are no longer using copper. We are making use of aluminium. And like I said, aluminium is very cost effective, is very cheap. So it will be better for us as a city to run it through the entire city. But we, like I said, we're currently putting plans in place to address the vandalism and the theft of our infrastructure by setting up teams that will be watching those high risk areas or the spots where criminals normally are, and where they tear apart our infrastructure. That is in place because we're taking a no stance against vandalism in our city.
Please explain what you have in your hand to us, MMC, and just take us through the different cables that we see.
Okay, this is a aluminium cable. It's now a small one. It's not a big one. We get bigger than this, thicker than this. This one we normally put in what we call a low line, which we put between the resident, the domestic line, and our main line. But then we have a main one that we put in our main line, the one that you're seeing hanging there. That's a thicker one, because that is on our main line. And that runs to the domestic line connecting to it. So this is just an idea of how it looks, and this is what we will be using across our areas. Even when we electrify informal settlements, we are also making use now of aluminium. We're not putting in copper there.
So Mekile, that was of course MMC for Electricity and Energy, Lance Grootboom, just giving us a roundup in terms of what the residents of Nelson Mandela Bay rather can expect as far as this new change from copper to now aluminium. He did make mention of the fact that it's going to be cheaper and more cost efficient as far as making sure that the vandals themselves will see no value at using these particular aluminium cables. Siphosethu, Booi, thank you very much for that update from Gqeberha.